The Smithsonian Faculty Fellowship Program represents a rewarding academic professional development opportunity for faculty at Montgomery College. The fellowships are a product of a unique collaboration between Montgomery College and Smithsonian Center for Education and Museum Studies. It's the first of its kind between the Smithsonian Institution and a community college.
Alyson Escobar earned her BS in microbiology and her MS in nutrition from the University of Maryland in College Park. She worked for nearly 20 years on nutrition education and policy issues for the U.S. Department of Agriculture. Since coming to Montgomery College full-time, she has served as chair of the Hospitality Management Department and taught food and nutrition courses in Rockville and Germantown. She is currently excited to be working with health and exercise science faculty on 2 learning communities, focusing on interrelationships between nutrition, exercise, fitness, and health, and the roles of diet and physical activity in successful weight management.
Much of what we cover in the introductory nutrition course that I teach could fall under that old adage, you are what you eat. We spend a lot of time looking at eating habits and food choices and dietary patterns and talking about what they mean and how they affect the diseases that we suffer from currently in this country. But when I got the opportunity to participate in this fellowship, I was very excited about the possibility of looking at that old adage from the opposite perspective. Do we in fact eat what we are? Or how does our identity influence our food choices? The exhibit that we used for our museum experience was Food Transforming the American Table, 1950 to the year 2000, which is located at the National Museum for American History. And this was not one of the ones that we visited last spring as part of the cohort because it wasn't open. And since many of you, I'm assuming, haven't had the opportunity to visit it yet, I have a few slides just to give you a flavor for what the exhibit looks like that my students provided me. At the front of the exhibit is Julia Child's kitchen, which pretty much looks the same as it did when she originally donated it to the Smithsonian. And on a side wall, we have some samples from her rather extensive collection of copper cookware. The exhibit's organized around several main themes. One of them is new and improved. And new and improved pretty much explores innovations behind some of the major changes with food production, with food processing, and food technology over the last 50 years. So here you see some of the very early on planting tools and some of the more automated equipment when it developed. Shortcuts for the home cook, so you see what was at one point a brand new range for the kitchen. And if you look closely here, you can see with the earliest TV dinner tray from Swanson and the family that's happily sitting in front of the TV program watching as they eat their dinner. The exhibit even looks at supermarket innovations, and you see some different posters of layouts, supermarket layouts, as well as some features with shopping carts. This is one of the very first fast food menus from McDonald's. The students love this. I got lots and lots of slides of this, okay? And here we have 48 different versions of a hot to-go cup lid. Whoever knew that you could come up with that many different variations, but there they are. And then another section, even though the theme overall throughout the exhibit is one very upbeat, talks about progress, better living, all of those advances. But even as early as the 1960s, which some of you who are as old as me may even remember, we had some concerns coming about related to how we were producing foods, mass production, and what that meant for the environment and for individuals and health issues around those. And you can see this is my favorite down here. I actually own one of these. I still have one in my cabinet at home. It's a yogurt maker, some of you who. Another theme in the exhibit, Resetting the Table, is all about the influence of immigrants, their ingredients, which you see displayed across the bottom, and some of the more popular spots, restaurants and whatnot, ethnic supermarkets, and their influence on American eating habits. And then the last part of the exhibit, which was really a fascinating section for me, number one, because it was a huge table that's set up in the middle of the exhibit, and it's a great place, especially in the American History Museum, for you to be able to sit and chat with someone as you're walking through, okay? Gave my students the opportunity to sit down and talk with one another about what they were experiencing. But the other very interesting thing is that inlaid into this long table are 3 Lazy Susans, if you guys remember Lazy Susans, okay? And on these Lazy Susans are different food guides, some of which are from the United States from different time periods. This one, the Basic 7, was actually the World War II food guide. You can see in the middle the little logo, the U.S. needs us strong, eat the Basic 7 every day. Okay. And another one, this one I found pretty interesting. This is the current Japanese food guide, as evidenced by a spinning top. And this was really interesting to me because in my former life, I was involved in developing the U.S. food guide, the food guide pyramid. And when we were doing those focus groups and playing with different shapes and forms, I can remember very explicitly the focus group people got terribly upset at the possibility of the pyramid being inverted. It looks like it's going to fall over. It looks like it's not stable. You can't do it like that. And so we ended up with the pyramid looking like it looked. But here we have the spinning top. And at the very top, it's actually what would be the base of the top, I suppose, if you were spinning it, water or tea. Okay. And then the little person who looks like they're running circles around there, which I can only assume is kind of putting physical activity at the base of your eating habits. And then one more, this one is from Old Ways Preservation and Trust, a private trust in Boston, or in this country, African Heritage Diet Pyramid, which basically is taking the foods that are common among that ethnic group and displaying them. Well, as you might be able to tell, I was really excited about the possibilities of this exhibit and exploring the identity theme. I had one small challenge, however. The exhibit opened 2 days before Thanksgiving last fall. And we were doing our entire museum-based project by the end of the semester. So that meant I had 2 weeks, and the students had 2 weeks. And I really have to give them credit for hanging in there with me, because I made it clear very early on in the semester when I found out about the exhibit, but it was just a matter of waiting until the end. So I designed most of the activities blind, but I think, and I just kept telling myself, we'll just look at this, you know, we science people, we'll look at this as the pilot, okay? And so we'll learn from it and move forward. Major objectives were just to familiarize students with the changes in food-related habits and trends over the past 50 years, and that pretty much was the exhibit content. And then have the students explore and write about what they believe those changes say about who we are and what we believe and value as Americans. And I call that collective identity concept. Some smaller objectives the first one was what I call emphasize less rather than more. We talked a lot in our cohort about letting the students experience and learn from the museum as opposed to educating them about the museum exhibit. So I wanted to design something that actually allowed them to do that. The concept of object-based learning was another one that we talked quite a bit about, so I wanted to incorporate that into the project somehow. Social learning, so encouraging the students to go in groups and talk about what they're seeing as they experience the exhibit. A focus on collective identity, so we were really talking about American identity versus individual identity, which is something that I think would be a lot of fun to do down the road. And then to emphasize writing, as I mentioned earlier, in any of the assignments. In a science class, I always get a little uncomfortable when I'm in the position of grading writing assignments, but it's really important. Okay.
Work off this, we think it's overheated.
Okay, alrighty. As far as the activities themselves, I had several. Before the visit, and you've heard a lot already today about the entrance narrative, it was particularly important to me in this situation because we were talking about a historical exhibit and covering a time frame when most of my students weren't alive. So in an effort to give them some background, I had them all do a personal interview with someone who was alive between 1950 and the year 2000. And it was a lot of fun to hear them come to class and talk about Professor Escobar, we weren't allowed to have soda. Professor Escobar, we didn't eat fast food. Professor Escobar, we ate dinner every night together, or my parents did, ate dinner every night together as a family. And I was like, yeah, sounds familiar, During the museum visit, I had them, basically I designed a very short piece for them to work with, and I just basically wanted to get them into all the sections of the exhibit. I wanted to make sure they saw everything that was there, or at least visited upon all the major themes. And I wanted them to find an object that they felt spoke to them somehow and reflect upon that. After the visit, I had them start to think about identity and some terms or short phrases that they felt were reflected by their experiences with the museum visit. And then the last piece was actually a summative essay that they wrote at the very end of the semester on this concept of American identity. And they used not only what they had gathered from their visit to the museum exhibit, but because the last section of the course, the way we teach it, is food technology and food production and those issues. We also had class discussions and a viewing of the video Food Inc. that fed into that essay. And I had the question, or the questions basically that I wanted them to address in the essay. What do you think the advances in food technology over the last 50 years say about America as a nation? In your opinion, should we continue to pursue an aggressive path of progress related to food, progress in quotes, related to food technology in the future? Why or why not? How will how we decide to move forward in this area continue to reflect or perhaps modify our identity as Americans? And I had just a few pieces that I wanted to read you in the words of the students themselves. I have to tell you that some of them were not terribly positive. Maxwell says, Americans want bigger and we want cheaper, and we tend to ignore how we achieve bigger and cheaper. Sarah added, Americans say they believe in individuality. We're raised to be our own person and different from everyone else. But many people are defined by the foods that they can afford to eat. Instead of individuality, we've created stereotypes. Bianca added, as Americans, we say we care about other living things, and we try and preserve trees and save the rainforest and help endangered species. But just because cows and chickens aren't endangered, they don't get any respect. Doesn't sound very American to me. And Nicholas summarizes, the most important aspect of American identity is what we say we believe in the most, freedom. But in many ways, our food and nutrition practices seem inconsistent with what we say we value, freedom, innovation, competition. Big corporations now control most of the crops in America, essentially turning agriculture into a mass business. Farmers don't own their own animals or the seeds they grow. I truly believe our identity as Americans has changed over time. We focus now only on how we can make things bigger, better, and faster. I don't want to leave you with a totally negative perception of what they thought, so a few other students were a little bit more upbeat. In America, people are less limited in their rights than many other countries. We believe we can always better ourselves and become the best we can be. If we truly believe that, we need to show that we have the will to do that, starting now. And Christina adds, I believe that changing America's food identity begins with American families. I would like to see families spend more time together, cooking meals at home rather than spending time at restaurants. And I would like parents to take responsibility for their health and make an effort to eat healthier for the sake of future generations. And I'll let Jen have the last word here. I believe the most important component of our food identity as a nation is the ability to change. The move toward organic and sustainable food in recent years is a step in the right direction. Together, we have more power than all of the biggest companies put together. Americans need to pause for a second and rethink what is really important to them. The health of the people of our country should be the priority above all else. So I had one slide at the end to show just kind of future plans. Obviously, I gave the students a ton of credit for sticking with me for those last 2 weeks and getting all of this done in that short period of time. They enjoyed it. Several of them told me that they were already visiting the museum again, planning on taking family members over Christmas break, and so that was very exciting to me. They did have a few comments, Manjula, on the structure of the exhibit, so I can share those with you later, the layout of the exhibit. But I got a lot of ideas for moving forward with similar projects. I'm particularly excited about the possibility of using those food guides as a way of exploring identity in different countries around the world and also with different groups within the US. It was by far the best professional development experience I've had here at MC, and I've had a few of them. And so my last slide, I'm sorry you can't see it, but I really want to thank Manjula, first of all, and all of the curators and the staff at the Smithsonian. They were fabulous to us. Sarah and Mimi, who just did an incredible job of putting the entire experience together. My students, because they hung in there and just did the best that they could with the time challenges we were faced with. And lastly, my fellow fellows. Swift, that was just for you. And I just want to say to the rest of you that you've got your challenges ahead of you when it comes to beating my group for food, because we can cook. Thank you very much.